Hey everyone, my name is Shanice and welcome back to my channel. I am here to do the mid-year book freakout tag. It is almost exactly midway through the year. We're already in June. And I will be answering 14 questions in the, I guess, traditional book tag questionnaire. No one has tagged me and I don't think anyone really tags anyone anymore. But if you'd, like to answer these questions yourself down below, I will love to read through some of your answers. That'll be pretty fun and interactive. But yeah, I have written down these questions, so I'm just going to be looking down a little bit while I speak. And to dive right in, the first question is, what is the best book that I've read so far in the year? If you've seen any of my wrap-up videos, I don't think this will be much of a surprise to anybody, but The Complete Stories of Clarice Lispector, best short story work that I've read in the whole year. And just as of 2 weeks ago now, I think, I came upon my favorite novel of the year, If an Egyptian Cannot Speak English by Noor Naga. And another novel that I really loved that was my favorite until Noor Naga was The Makioka Sisters by Junichiro Tanizaki. There are other books that I really enjoyed too, like Chlorine, like The Weight of Things, but my favorites, I would say, are those three: the Lispector, the Naga, and the Tanizaki. Question number 2 is best sequel I've read, and my answer is none. The only sequel that I really have read is The Obelisk Gate by N.K. Jemisin, and I really didn't love that one. And then I did read the Heartstopper series, and I mean, technically I did enjoy some of the sequels to the first volume, but in my mind I almost consider it like one piece of work because I've read them all essentially in one day. But a proper sequel that I read, none. Actually, thinking about it, I did read Angel's, what is it called? Angel's Death? Angel's Game, I think that's what it is. The Safon book. I guess because I didn't feel any particular way about it. Well, one, I forgot that I even read it this year, and two, is it really an answer to this question? I don't know. Like, essentially, I don't feel very strongly about any sequel that I read this year. Then moving on to new release I haven't read yet, but want to, and actually I have it right next to me, and it is due this Friday, so I need to read this as soon as possible because I can't renew it. I don't know if your libraries work the same way as mine, but if it's a new release you only have 2 weeks to read it. Yeah, anyway, this is All Fours by Miranda July. I read her short story collection last year and I loved it. It was one of my favorites of last year, and she wrote one novel prior to this one, but this is her latest release, and this is a Riverhead Books release. I adore Riverhead Books and I adore Miranda July, so I need to jump on this very quickly. This one came out very recently anyway. And then another one that I kind of discovered recently that sounds right up my alley that came out in mid-May is called This Strange Eventful History by Claire Massoud. This is based on her own family's ancestry and journey. Essentially it traces 7 decades of an Algerian French family through war, through migration, and all of that. It is a sweeping intergenerational family saga. I love those. And yeah, it takes place from 1940 to 2010. Lit Hub listed it as one of the most anticipated books of 2024. So yeah, this is one that's already been published that I haven't gotten to yet. I honestly don't think I will get to it this year. I have enough big books to get through, but this sounds really fascinating. Then question number 4 is most anticipated release for the second half of 2024. Without a doubt, Sally Rooney's Intermezzo comes out in September. I've already pre-ordered it. I'm pumped. And I have to include Halle Butler's Banal Nightmare, a follow-up to The New Me, which I loved, one of my favorites of last year. And all I know is that it is about a young woman, probably a millennial, who moves from New York back to her Midwestern hometown. I don't know anything beyond that and I don't really care. This could be about grass and I will read it. I have faith in Halle Butler, and yeah, this one comes out in July, so like the beginning of the second half of the year. So those are my top 2. Next question is biggest disappointment. It crushes my heart to say this, but Real Americans by Rachel Khong. I just finished it actually yesterday, so I'm not going to speak about it too much in depth because I will be talking about it at the end of the month in my wrap up. But Goodbye Vitamin to me was like a perfect book. I gave it 5 stars. I loved it. This one was, it was kind of a mess. So I think because I just expected another Goodbye Vitamin in terms of quality, I didn't feel like I got that with Real Americans. So that one was a major disappointment. It's the most like heartfelt disappointment this year. Others that disappointed: A Shining by Jan Fosse was just predictable and, I don't know, like pseudo-religious, pseudo-intellectual, and kind of uninteresting. Sorry if you're a fan of that one. I also didn't love Ship of Magic. Also kind of predictable. Tess of the D'Urbervilles I despised. 1 star, hated that book. Ripe, a novel that sounded like I would love, but alas, I hated, as well as The Truants. I was in like a dark academia vibe, and though it did deliver a bit on that dark academia, plot was very thin. I have other like least favorite books of the year, but these I guess are the most memorable disappointments of the year. The next question is biggest surprise of the year. Probably the Makioka Sisters, because I went into it thinking that it was going to be really dry, really boring. The font in my edition is so small, so like it doesn't inspire excitement, and it just blew me away. So I enjoyed every second. It was so funny. It was so much fun. It was like not as dense as I thought it would be at all. So definitely that one. I would say Bear by Marian Engel, mainly because I thought I would hate it, similar to the Makioka Sisters, and not a perfect book, but I was just surprised by how committed the writing was to this ungodly relationship that forms in this book. It's a writer completely dedicated to pushing the plot that she set from page 1. So I could only give Marian Engel her props. And then next question is new favorite writers. Again, very obvious. I kind of already listed them in my favorite books so far in the year. Nornaga, what a goddess. Clarice Lispector, duh. And I just finished a book today by Billy Ray Belcourt. Those are 3 authors that I will be, I mean, obviously Lispector is dead, so I will be reading as much of her works as I can that, you know, have been published into English. And as for Nornaga and Billy Ray Belcourt, I'm on board. Sign me up. Any new release, I'm there. And then the next few questions are newest fictional crush, newest favorite character, book that made you cry. None. Even if I love a book, it doesn't really make me cry, or like in happiness and sadness. Very rarely does that ever happen. I'm more of a awestruck kind of reader. I am in love with the prose, I'm in love with the story, I'm in love with the characters, but not enough that I feel the emotion myself. I don't know if that's a weakness of mine as a reader, but it is the way it is. So I can't really answer any of these. Favorite character, the closest that I can say a character came to being my favorite is maybe Yukiko from the Makioka Sisters, just because I admired her a lot for her confidence in herself. Even though she's very shy, like me, I actually related to her in a lot of ways, but even though she's shy and very quiet, she never bent her will to please society. Like, even if her family was against her, she just knew who she was and what she wanted, and she didn't lose sight of that. And hey, I think that's really, really admirable. So she's not perfect, so when I was reading, I wasn't thinking like, oh, she's my new favorite character of all time. But if I were to answer this, I guess Yukiko stands out. And then next question is book that made me the happiest. And I guess if I were to say happy, like heart fluttering, cutesy, lighthearted, I felt happy reading it, probably the Heartstopper series. They're just so cute and fluffy and adorable that like you just can't help but smile talking about Heartstopper. So happy in that way, Heartstopper. Happy as a reader and a lover of like language and sentences. Then the Lispector comes to mind, the Nornagas, the Billy Ray Belcourts. In terms of like plot and story, Tanizaki, you have Lori Moore in her short stories. They were very fun. And also like Chlorine, because that one made me feel super free as an aspiring writer, like of what writing could do. That one just invigorated me. So yeah, I guess happiness is multifaceted, but all of those books gave me a version of happiness. Then my favorite book to film adaptation this year, it has to be Dune. Dune Part 2. I adore that movie. I watched it the day that it came out, and I did love the book when I read it a few years ago. But to be fair, there are slim pickings for other options other than Dune Part 2. Conveniently, I have a series where I read a book and I review both the book and its film or TV adaptation. So in exploring some films this year, even those just haven't really been that remarkable, I would say if I were being petty, probably Tess is another favorite book to film adaptation. Tess, directed by Polanski, mainly because the book sucked and the film, you know, is technically competent, although a bit of a slog, but you know, competent nonetheless. So yeah, I guess compared to any other book to film adaptations I've watched this year, Tess and the obvious standout Dune Part 2. So next up is The Most Beautiful Book that I bought. So this one is not, well, actually, I don't really buy outstandingly beautiful books because those are expensive and I'm watching my wallet and my funds. So sometimes I splurge on new releases like this one, and you know, visually I wouldn't say it's the most beautiful cover, but take a look at what it is. It is a signed, obviously first edition copy because it just came out like 2 months ago. This is signed by Rachel Khong. So I don't adore the cover, but you know, for what this signed copy means, considering I just was so moved by Goodbye Vitamin, despite not loving this book, still of great value to me as a physical copy, and you know, the fact that it's signed in my library in my life. So I would say this is maybe the most beautiful that I purchased this year. The other books I bought have been standard, kind of ugly, not gonna lie. And then the last question is books I really need to read by the end of the year. So obviously All Fours, which I mentioned earlier, I actually had to step out and find the physical working list that I have of the books that I must finish in 2024. So some of these are series that I have started. So one is The Stone Sky. This is the last book in the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. I want to finish this and I want to see how it ends. Everyone loves this series so much and I really enjoyed the first book. The second book not so much. Like, I need to see where this third one takes us. So I have to finish that one. Am I ever gonna finish A Game of Thrones, or sorry, A Song of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin? I really hope so. At the very least, I need to finish A Storm of Swords, the third book in the series. Mainly want to read it, finish it, not just for the story, but also so I can like continue seasons 3 and 4 of the show. I only watched up to season 2 and I absolutely love the show. But I am dedicated to reading the books first before watching the series. And so what I've heard is seasons 3 and 4 are based on book 3, and then book 4 is seasons like 5 and kind of 6, and then the TV show trails off into its own thing. But yeah, I at least want to read A Storm of Swords this year. I also want to finish my reread of The Neapolitan Quartet by Elena Ferrante, The Story of the Lost Child. I think I'm going to do that this summer. It just feels like a summer kind of book. Dombey and Son. I think I'm still on page 300 and I really enjoyed it, but I just stopped because I had to begin, you know, my 2024 book challenges, and that one just kind of took a backseat. Same with Dune Messiah. I wanted to read it, not necessarily in preparation for Dune Part 2, because Dune Part 2 is not based on the Messiah book, but just getting back into the story would kind of pump me up for the movie. That never happened. You Never Get It Back, which is a short story collection by my former professor, Cara Blue Adams. I've had this since it was published and I haven't read it yet, so need to get on that. Same with the O. Henry short stories of 2023. You know, it's already midway through the year. I would like to finish this at some point. I need to read The Prisoner of Heaven, Book 3 in the Sappho Cemetery of Forgotten Books series, because I'm going to read Book 4 as my big book challenge in October, so I just need to finish Book 3. And then lastly, and I think you can already tell that I'm not going to accomplish reading all of these books, but you know, the goal would also be to, in addition to finishing those, to also reread Wolf Hall, Bring Up the Bodies, and then finally read Book 3, The Mirror and the Light, all by Hilary Mantel. I also want to watch the TV show adaptation. So very ambitious, highly improbable that I'm going to get to even half of these. But yeah, to answer the question honestly, those are the books that I want to read by the end of the year. So yeah, that is it for the tag. I do want to just add that I am very happy with the way my reading has been going this year. I set my goal to 50 books on Goodreads, and it's June 8th. And I've already read 40 books, so I don't know, can I do 100 this year? It's not like an actual goal, I'm just curious to see if I can actually do it. I guess by this year I've gotten used to my work schedule, I've gotten used to what my best reading times and days are, and just kind of going easy on myself. I think all of that has helped me actually read more. And more thoroughly and more deeply. So I'm just very happy and honestly surprised that I've been able to read this much this year, because I've had the same hobbies that I did last year and I have the same job. And last year I think I read just under 70 books, which is great. It's great if you read 2 books a year, don't get me wrong. I think reading is great. The number doesn't matter that much. It's how you read the book and what you take from the book that I think matters the most. But yeah, 40 books by the beginning of June is outstanding for me. Again, if you're interested in answering these questions yourselves, please feel free to do so down below. I would love to read what you answered, what some of your faves so far in the year have been, and also like what new releases you're pumped for. Yeah, I really love doing this video as a kind of catch up, to check in to see how we all are doing by this time of the year. So thank you so much for watching as usual, and like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all next week. Bye.